Coming up in this episode of In Clear Focus.
A very wise man once said, perspective is not what you are looking at, but where you're looking from. So shifting perspectives in a team can unleash unbelievably creative solutions to problems that seemed impossible to solve before.
You're listening to In Clear Focus, fresh perspectives on the business of advertising, produced weekly by Big Eye. Hello, I'm your host, Adrian Tennant, VP of Insights at Big Eye, a full-service, audience-focused creative agency. We're based in Orlando, Florida, serving clients across the United States and beyond. Thank you for joining us. Bringing together business leaders, politicians, and journalists to discuss current economic and social challenges, the World Economic Forum's annual meeting is usually held in January in the ski town of Davos, Switzerland. This year, due to COVID-19, the annual meeting was held virtually. The WEF's decision reflected the level of global disruption unleashed by the worst health crisis in more than a century, the aftershocks of which will have profound long-term impacts on many aspects of our consumer-led society. And as my colleague Dana Cassell described in Big Eye's webinar and podcast, a return to business as usual isn't an option. Many organisations have been forced by the pandemic to re-engineer some of the ways they operate. But how do you introduce change strategically and at scale within an organisation? My guest this week is a change enthusiast who resists the idea of only having one profession. Chantal Schmelz works as a facilitator, strategist, lecturer and marketing consultant with a very diverse portfolio of projects and clients. But Chantal's projects always have two things in common. They actively drive positive change, and they only work when the collective intelligence of the team is harnessed. Chantal uses agile methods, tools, and processes to enable co-thinking and collaboration. Chantal has worked with McDonald's, the innovation hub of the University of Zurich, and with startups all around Europe. To talk about her work and playful approach to creative facilitation, Chantal is joining us today from her home in Zurich, Switzerland. Chantal, welcome to In Clear Focus.
Thank you very much for having me, Adrian. It's a pleasure.
Chantal, you are a facilitator, strategist, lecturer, and marketing consultant. Do you typically work with clients who engage you for just one of your skills, or are they looking to take advantage of a multidisciplinary approach?
So actually, it most often is kind of an unintentional upselling process. To tackle strategy often sounds too big of a task, and facilitation is too intangible for a lot of people, or fancy-pantsy for them. So actually often people come to me with a very clearly framed task, like doing a web page or getting their teams trained on any specific marketing communication topic. And once we get to work together by asking a few, probably sometimes uncomfortable questions, we start turning stone by stone. And in the end, we mostly work on a rather strategic project together with the help of agile methods. So I'd say most of them are not specifically looking for my multidisciplinary approach unless they have already worked with me, but get to see the value of connecting all these dots and thus creating better outcome once they've overcome the fear of tasks that seemed too big to tackle.
Would you say that you're equal parts facilitator, strategist, lecturer, and marketer, or do you favor one role or specialism over the others?
What a lovely question. I've always been a kinesthetic learner myself. One of the characteristics being that connecting things and spatial thinking have always come very natural to me. But I had an awfully hard time at school, as the system implies that there are natural boundaries between physics and English, where in my brain there are none. All dots are somehow connected. So frankly speaking, I've never much questioned whether I'm now working as a facilitator or a marketer only. I like to listen and watch closely and then bring all skills to the table that might help the process. So I see myself rather as a human being with a toolbox full of very differently shaped tools that all have their benefits and timing and also limitations. Using them resourcefully, that is more important to me than whether a client is referring to me as their marketing consultant or their facilitator. However, I'm not down talking on the difficulties that one faces when, especially I have to position myself clearly, as in this podcast. And ironically, that is something that I try to avoid against the advice I'd regularly give to my marketing clients when I tell them they have to have a very clear positioning.
I like that. So Chantal, what types of projects have you been working on lately?
Multidisciplinary ones. I know that's not the answer you were looking for, but it's somehow true. So last week I ran a Lego Serious Play workshop with 50 people that all work at the overlap of innovation and education. And we worked on the topic of gamification. So it was all mixed and tangled up, multidisciplinary. And I also currently work on 2 bigger projects with clients that always remind me René Mauburn's Blue Ocean strategy book, because both are existing within long been there industries with clear standards and procedures and also a clear set of thinking or mindset. However, both have unique approaches that lay way outside of the industry norm or what has been known so far. So one is a small fashion label that manages to produce circular fashion. So not just hopping on this sustainability train that the bigger fashion labels have onboarded over the last few years because it was trendy, where they do textile recycling, which mostly only consists of collecting old clothes, shredding them and reusing as insulation materials. This small label has managed to really retrieve the raw materials from their clothes and making new ones out of them. And the other one is an even older trade. It's retail. So it's a hard discount retailer that is built up in a very similar way to the Aldi concept from years back. So old style retail. However, while Aldi has mostly stuck to industrialized countries for their expansion, they are expanding into the Philippine market with its very unique demographics in a time where the communities there, not only by the pandemic, have already been widely digitalized. They have the need to educate their consumers while not making them feel that they're being educated. So excellent use cases for multidisciplinary tasks where I can bring all my skills to the table, not simultaneously, but over the course of time, all of them will be used.
Excellent. Well, you mentioned the Lego Serious Play method. I know you're a facilitator and certified in the method. Could you explain what it is and how you came to be using Lego in facilitation?
I have 2 boys at home, so we were playing Lego, not very seriously, at home already. And I've seen the benefits with my children talking over Lego already. I also have an education degree, and with all my consultancy customers, clients, I always hit the same brick wall where they just got stuck because you handed them a blank sheet of paper where they had to note down bullets or ideas or had to come to decisions based on just talking together. And I felt with the education knowledge in the background that there must be more opportunities to unleash the potential that lays in these discussions. A friend of mine started doing Lego and she was like, that's going to be the solution for unstucking those discussions. So I took upon the challenge and got certified and have ever since had the most amazing experiences with customers, people just wanting to test the method and being really like, oh, I didn't know all these people in the room, but I now somehow feel connected and we could really without knowing each other, with very different backgrounds, we could work on one topic together in a very appreciative, highly participative way. So this, for me, is the beauty of Lego Serious Play, and also how I came to use it in the first place.
What are some of the most common preconceptions clients and participants have about using, I nearly said playing with, but using Lego?
Oh, we always say, let's play, because, everyone knows it's a play, and playing comes very natural to all human beings, so why not to managers and CEOs? However, especially when it's a highly hierarchical or highly disturbed team, there you always have people crossed-armed, eyes rolling. Oh, yet another team building event, and I've been to tons of them. And we try to always just say, give it a try. If you don't like it in half an hour, leave it. And it doesn't even take half an hour, because most of the people, because they know Lego from their kids' rooms and the painful experience when you stumble upon it, then most of them really think you're gonna childishly play with Lego. But it's a serious play, so there's a process behind, there's a dedicated outcome you want to achieve, and it's just enabling discussions in a very easy way that also perfectly works cross-culturally. So I've had all these crossed-armed and funny faces when I tell them we're going to do Lego now. However, in the end, all of them have been rather fascinated by how easy discussions ran throughout the day.
Do you typically work with a regular set of Lego bricks, or is there one particular set that you give to each participant?
That really depends on whether we play physical, like in locations on site, or whether we do online sessions. If we play online Lego Serious Play, we go by the standard Lego Serious Play exploration bags, because then it helps that everyone who's only connected via screen has the same set in front of them. When you have large groups around big tables, I just really put masses of Lego on there to have them explore everything, because there you have another context. So both work with limitations, whether virtually or physically.
What does the Lego Serious Play method certification process look like?
Actually, Lego Serious Play was invented by Lego themselves, as they were looking for a new innovation process that would enable them to get to new products and innovations faster. They used that for a couple of years, and in 2010 they decided to make it available under the Custom Commons license. So they're supplying the bricks and have kind of part of the earnings on that, but they are not the ones doing the facilitation. There are various companies, Master Chief, Black Belt, Lego Serious Play gurus that do certifications, but you're not certified by Lego, you're certified by each of those institutions that do certification rounds. However, you get a how to use the Lego brand custom Creative Commons manual that you have to follow once you tell the world that you are now officially a Lego Serious Play facilitator.
Let's take a short break. We'll be right back after these messages.
I'm Seth Segura, VP and Creative Director at Big Eye. Every week, In Clear Focus addresses topics that impact our work as creative professionals. At Big Eye, we always put audiences first. For every engagement, we commit to really understanding our clients' prospects and customers. Through our own primary research, we capture valuable data about people's attitudes, behaviors, and motivations. These insights inform our strategy and guide our creative briefs. Clients see them brought to life in inspiring, imaginative, brand building, and persuasive activation campaigns. If you'd like to put Big Eye's audience-focused creative communications to work for your brand, please contact us. Email info@bigeyeagency.com. Big Eye, reaching the right people in the right place at the right time.
How do you identify?
Female,
male,
gender fluid,
cisgender, genderqueer,
non-binary,
transfeminine.
Society is constantly changing and evolving. To understand how Americans feel about gender identity and expression, Big Eye undertook a national study involving over 2,000 adult consumers. Over half of those aged 18 to 39 believe that traditional binary labels of male and female are outdated and instead see gender as a spectrum. Our exclusive report, Gender Beyond the Binary, reveals how beliefs across different generations influence the purchase of toys, clothes, and consumer packaged goods. To download the full report, go to bigeye.agency/gender.
Non-conforming,
transgender, two-spirit,
transmasculine,
gender fluid.
Gender Beyond the Binary. Welcome back. I'm talking with Chantal Schmelz, a strategist, facilitator, and marketer based in Zurich, Switzerland. Now, you mentioned that you're involved in a very interesting textile company. Could you explain the philosophy behind the yarn-to-yarn process?
Probably a lot of people already know cradle to cradle as a concept of circular economy. And yarn to yarn is kind of the adaptation to the textile industry, where you say you use materials that can either be easily separated once clothes are being returned after use. For example, you need to be very careful what patches you sew onto your clothes, what color imprints you use, what tags you use, what buttons, what zippers, because they need to be ripped off before the reuse can start. And also, like with cradle to cradle, it's essential that you don't mix raw materials in a way that they cannot be separated anymore. So you don't glue it, you nail it, because then it can be separated. And with yarn to yarn, you use fibers that can be separated chemically or with bioenzymes easily, so that in the end you have cotton and polyethylene fibers as raw materials in the end, so you can have new yarn created out of the raw materials easily. So it's the same process as cradle to cradle for the textile industry, and at the moment it's based on a bioenzyme process that allows to separate cotton and polyethylene fibers so that they can be totally 100% reused at the end.
Chantal, how did you become involved in this particular technology?
Actually, started with Facebook advertising. As I said earlier, a very concrete, clearly framed task someone needed to be done. So marketing campaign, they needed someone to run the ads for them. And by asking more and more questions and also being asked questions back, we came to, okay, there's more to the strategy that needs to be developed. The storytelling needs to be enlarged, needs to be tailored to certain audiences that are already rejecting fast fashion. So it's really that unconscious or unintentional upselling how I came to be involved in the yarn-to-yarn process or project as a consultant.
Chantal, I know you're also very involved in WEConnect International. Could you tell us a little bit about your work with the organization?
Yes, I gladly do so. WEConnect is certifying women-owned businesses to give the purchasing partner, the certified buyer, let's say Walmart, for example, in the US, they have a hard time figuring out which women-owned business could be a potential supplier for us. So WEConnect kind of bridges that gap, giving the buyer insight into what suppliers there are in the specific areas they're looking for products or suppliers. In the US, I know, because WEConnect originates from the US, and you have laws that tell procurement, purchasing, to what percentage they have to buy from minorities, whether this is Black community or women-owned business or LGBTQ. So they have like these set rules. In Europe, these rules or regulations, laws do not exist. At the moment, there are so many supply chains in Europe that have 0% women-owned supply in there. And we try to change that. In my role, I do that for the Swiss market. So I try to first certify the women-owned businesses, assess them, and then also get them in touch with potential buyer-side customers so that we can help to diversify supply chain as well, because that's a big chunk of the market that is so far an untapped potential for women-owned businesses.
In which areas of business do you see the most untapped opportunities for women?
So I think studies have already shown plenty of times that female-led teams or female-led companies, as well as diverse-led teams, sustainably perform with a higher return on investment for investors, for example, than all male-led teams. So there's generally a lot of potential in the market for female-owned businesses. However, what we see that a lot of women directly go into the service area of business, training, translation, copywriting, marketing, consulting, such as I do. And there is a huge demand for products, medtech, so the more technical areas, where I think that the very mindful approach that women give to building up a company could also not only lead to them tapping into this potential or these opportunities, but also sustainably changing industries to a more sustainable working.
Chantal, thinking about strategy, what are some of the biggest challenges you're finding that clients are facing right now?
Even though we often say that we do forward-looking, future-oriented strategy work, we mostly don't. We look at past data or data trends and then extrapolate it to generate a strategy that looks into the future. Mathematically calculated, gut feeling, extrapolated. Now, with the pandemic that hit the entire world at the same time, looking at past data and data trends doesn't do the trick anymore. And even if you say we only look at the years 2020 to 2021, the underlying assumption remains that this is just an exception and the trends might not continue. So companies are facing now the challenge that they have to come up with strategies from within and still make sure that their mindset remains agile to the point where they do short sprints, evaluating new problems, new challenges, ideating, prototyping, testing, and then redoing it over and over again. And I think that's at the moment the biggest challenge, because lots of bigger companies are still used to long innovation cycles where they do all the research properly, and data analysts spend hours and hours on evaluating and benchmarking before they put anything in front of the customer. And I think that has gone.
Yeah, makes sense. Chantal, in what kinds of ways are you typically supporting clients with strategy?
I'm really hard on you in many. No, seriously. It is like with children. If you have same age, same background of upbringing, same schooling, you still have totally different kids. And this also holds true for businesses. I don't have the one typical approach of supporting them with their strategy. But I found like 3 things to be of the essence for every good or successful strategy process. One is like enabling all involved parties to form a joint understanding of the challenge, because meeting culture mostly renders this impossible. It's like meetings are more of a talking back and forth, staring at the wall battle than a co-thinking process that would allow teams to capitalize on their joint knowledge. So setting the stage to facilitate people to really use this crowd wisdom to jointly understand the problem and being able to tell one story with one voice as a team really helps to move forward fast with strategy work. The second one is perspective. A very wise man once said, perspective is not what you are looking at, but where you're looking from. And we are often caught up in our own perspectives and probably don't see the opportunities that lie right next to us because our standpoint is not into the right direction. So shifting perspectives in a team can unleash unbelievably creative solutions to problems that seemed impossible to solve before. And the third one is getting the teams, the companies to the mindset that they do strategies in small increments and test them right away. Get them in front of the relevant user, customer, stakeholder, because the most beautiful PowerPoints are totally useless unless you get the user, the customer to buy into them. So I think giving that perspective on the importance of testing, because before data analytics was like the key discipline you had to master, now it's testing. Testing and interpreting data you get from testing in order to move forward fast.
So, Chantal, thinking about all the projects that you've been involved with across several disciplines, which was your favorite and why?
Actually, very interesting story of a female entrepreneur. When I started with her, probably 4 years back, she was neither tech-loving, nor did she have any web page, online shop, anything like that. She's selling household products, designed very nicely, high functional, so excellent innovative products for the mass market. And she was not on the internet at that point. 2 years later, she became Amazon Entrepreneur of the Year in Germany. And the transition we made throughout all this and accompanying her throughout this journey, she was on television on one of these Shark Tank shows. So a really exciting story to be part of. And at the beginning, I would not have imagined that we would manage that at all, to get her on the internet, selling on Amazon, not in my wildest dreams. And she's very successfully launching one product after the other now.
Excellent. Chantal, if In Clear Focus listeners would like to learn more about you and your work in strategy, facilitation and marketing, where can they find you?
Most easily, I'd assume on LinkedIn, because there I'm available in all languages that I'm able to speak.
Perfect. Chantal, thank you very much for being our guest this week on In Clear Focus.
Thank you very much, Adrian, for having me. It was a real pleasure.
Coming up next time on In Clear Focus.
In a way that advertising used to be, where you trust the channel you're watching or you trust the magazine you're reading, that trust is now in those influencers. And it's not like you're just getting that content. You're not just getting served an ad. You're getting served this person's entire life or whatever it is that their niche is that they're sharing about. And that is where that trust is established.
That's an interview with influencer marketing expert Paige Garrett next week on In Clear Focus. Thanks to my guest this week, Chantal Schmelz, strategist, marketer, and facilitator. You'll find a transcript with links to the resources we discussed today on the In Clear Focus page at bigeyeagency.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider following us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening to In Clear Focus, produced by Big Eye. I've been your host, Adrian Tennant. Until next week, goodbye.